these reports all over the place now that the White House and the Biden administration is thinking about these preemptive pardons. And they name some high-profile people, two who were on the January 6th committee, Adam Schiff and Liz Cheney, and then they also name Fauci. So those would be for various different things. Of course, President Trump, a lot of this, remember, the information they were sharing was they were saying that they were doing it in a partisan way, and they weren't actually letting people see all the evidence. It was one-sided with the January 6th committee. I don't know exactly what charge you would bring against them, but this is not really about that. This is the left trying to scare the American people about President Trump's FBI being reformed so that it's no longer weaponized. And I think what they're scared about, and how long have we talked about for just the last 4 years, that this FBI has become weaponized against pro-lifers, conservatives, Donald Trump, and anyone associated with him, if they could get anything charged. They even went too far, most people believe, on what happened with most actors on January 6th, with these people getting 20 and 30-year jail terms. So to de-weaponize the FBI, you would think would be the opposite of bringing criminal charges against politicians and former politicians, and instead saying that was wrong then, it's also wrong now, and in the future, we're going to actually focus on actual criminal behavior. Now, if inside the Department of Justice, you could show that there were attorneys like what was happening under the Mueller investigation, you saw those, you saw those investigations go, and that anything was improper there, but we had a special counsel look into that, and they got one prosecution done over the guy who edited the email, and it was not, I mean, those didn't go very far. So I think it's kind of like, let's look towards the future. We either have to get rid of these institutions or reform them, because we have to have something like a Department of Justice and an FBI in a country our size. We have to have a federal law enforcement agency. There's a lot of issues inside this idea when we talk about a weaponized government than when you talk about de-weaponizing it. And you're not going to be able to de-weaponize it by going after Democrats. Republicans going after Democrats, that's just going to be continuing to weaponize law enforcement, and there'll be just that much more lack of faith in the institutions. I think what you really have here is that the left and Democrats, and let's just say Washington, D.C. as a whole, let's go bigger than just Democrats, they thought they were going to win this election. They thought the move to take Joe Biden out was all they had to do, that Kamala Harris would be historic, that even though she wasn't that great of a candidate, the fact that she would be the first black woman, so you add these things to it, she was going to just waltz her way to the White House. And not only didn't happen, this race, unlike what many of us were hoping didn't happen but preparing for, was done very early and very quickly. But the idea that they're testing the theory, remember, they said that a presidential self-pardon would be going too far. Now they're going further than that by saying, can you pre-pardon?
Well, and what many on the left or in kind of the Washington think tank world, like the Brookings Institution, note that pardons don't need to follow convictions, but can be issued before or during criminal prosecution. The rationale for so-called preemptive pardons is there's no point in requiring someone to live in fear of conviction or going through trial. And they even point to Gerald Ford pardoning President Nixon before there was a criminal case or thing actually established.
That may establish it right there.
But then you also look at the way that Joe Biden wrote the pardon for his son.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
A full and unconditional pardon for those offenses against the United States which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from January 1st, 2014 through December 1st, 2024, including, but not limited to, all offenses charged or prosecuted by the special counsel.
Yeah.
So it mentions those, but makes it clear it's way broader.
Yeah,
anything that he did or may have done. And I think that's the type of language you would see if they were to go forward with these type of preemptive pardons, to leave it vague and say anything they may or may not have done that's an offense against the United States.
Verbiage that was in the Hunter pardon really just says pretty much anything that happened over the 10 years that could have happened, might have happened, did happen,
as long
it's
as
wiped away. As long as the federal has been wiped away. So I think that you could probably blanket do the same thing. Now, you're right. It is a political decision for some of these. But if they spin it as we're protecting you from a Trump White House that is going to unjustly go after you, then that makes the political spin a little easier for your own base.
Yeah, I think that you'd have to really think through taking something like this if you have much of a political future in mind.
I think it's also important to keep in mind that Joe Biden is a particularly selfish guy, and a large number of commentators have suggested his pardon of his son was very selfish. It benefited Joe Biden, particularly with respect to Burisma and Ukraine. So the question becomes, will any of these proposed pardons actually benefit Joe Biden? And I think at the end of the day, the answer is no. So I'm not necessarily sure he will care whether Liz Cheney or James Comey or Fauci is indeed pardoned, because the question becomes, does it benefit the Biden family?
The left that's saying he's abusing this power, really, if it were to somehow be challenged, I don't know, and I'm not the attorney, but it seems like it would be very hard to find someone who is standing to bring that challenge. And even if they did, and it made it all the way to the Supreme Court, this Supreme Court has been very generous with the interpretation of presidential power. Yep. We got that from the immunity ruling. And so you see that, and even if it did get all the way to the Supreme Court, challenging his wide sweeping pardons, I don't know that even if there are some commentators that could make the point that maybe it went too far, that the Supreme Court would be inclined to put a limit on that presidential pardon power, because it's pretty plain in the Constitution. The only thing he can't grant a pardon for is for impeachment, because that's the political process. So people may be crying foul on the left, and I think that people like Karine Jean-Pierre may be pretty frustrated that she had to go out there and repeat that line, no, it will never happen, so many times. Right. But I don't know that there's any recourse for anyone to go back after the president and try to clean up the widespread usage if he chooses to go down that road.
No, I think after that, it was all bets are off. And this White House, again, they're not even consulting the president. He's the one that actually has the power. I guess they're kind of come up with, what do we give him a briefing on this? And should we actually recommend this to the president of the United States before he leaves office? On January 20th. Usually these come on, very late in the day on January 19th, where these kind of more controversial pardons get issued. But they would have to approach people. I don't think they want a bunch of people offered pardons by the president who then say, no, I don't need a pardon because I didn't do anything wrong or illegal. I'm not worried about like that. I just called for investigations into something. And the people who made the decisions about that are the ones who have to do follow the law the right way.